Alright everyone, welcome back to another turn of Operation Schultz. This is going to be the British Commonwealth and Free France. I'm no longer going to be recording France separately. They're not a world power, they're not worth the effort. They don't deserve it. Okay, so let's, actually one minor bit of housekeeping. The GB, we ended up, in our discussions, we landed on allowing the airborne for the British to be built, in Northern England last turn, because even if Germany surrounds Paris, he's allowed to move his units in. So it's less of an absolutely moronic blunder than it may otherwise have appeared. So Davik has kindly allowed for to let it slide without any further argument or discussion. So basically, the short of it is, the airborne that was built in some of the discussions that we were having is going to stay, and the result is going to be one fewer IPP saved in the British bank. The math only works out there because there was also some shenanigans with a militia in Somaliland that is no longer there either, so it works. Okay, let's get straight into the tech roles. I only have one functioning factory now, and I'm going to dedicate my role to anti-submarine warfare. That is an 8, and that is a hit. Fantastic. Okay, so I'll declare my British buys. So I'm moving the light carrier from stage 2 to to being complete for 4 IPPs, and then clearing the rest of my GB bank with 1 infantry built for the purpose of Lend-Lease. I know I don't have to declare who they're going to before they actually end up being sent, but those are just to help me keep things straight. I was originally planning on sending a little bit more, and I wasn't sure where it was all going to go and where it was coming from. So I guess I reserve the right to change where they end up going, just because I'm not required to announce where they're going right now. I just have those markers there to keep things straight in my head. Okay, so I'm for GB, that's all 7 that I have available. For FEC, I'm buying 1 militia for the purpose of Lend-Lease, and 1 colonial infantry. That colonial infantry is discounted for the call to arms of the British Empire, so that 6 turns into 5 and just clears my bank. And Anzac is just buying 1 militia, leaving 1 IPP remaining. Alright, let's get straight into combat moves. There's only 1 that is intentionally, definitely going to have combat. I'm going to declare from the Gold Coast, the seaplane is going to go on map into A51 to target the German submarine there. And a destroyer from A44 is going to join that that combat on a 1-to-1 ratio with the seaplane on map, so it gets to shoot 2, but the German submarine does get to shoot back. Other combat moves to declare before we just roll it. That's French, we don't have to worry about that yet. Okay, so from Suez, 1 colonial infantry is boarding the transport, the FEC transport that's in port to the south. And then the transport and the heavy cruiser are coming out of port and moving 1. Well, they're just going to move 1 for now, and then the Anzac artillery from British Somaliland is also going to board the transport. Yeah. And then all of that is going to continue into I1. So 1, 2, 3 is the movement allowance. All of the land units on the transport, that's the Anzac artillery and the GB Colonial are going to disembark into South Africa. And additionally, the heavy cruiser and the transport are just going to go in port in South Africa with the Anzac transport that's already there. Technically, that was a combat move because it passes the Italians here. I've already been in discussions with Davik. It's been a few hours. He's busy doing something, I don't know. He hasn't been able to respond to me yet. I'm gonna assume he doesn't want to declare war with the Italians. It makes good sense for him to do so if he's already planning on declaring war with the Italians next turn. This way he can potentially snipe a few units if he just gets a little bit lucky in that naval combat, just a 1-to-1 in terms of bodies, and just a bit weaker. I don't expect him to be declaring war with the Italians next turn, so I'm gonna assume he's gonna let that slide pretty confidently. More combat moves. Last one. The destroyer that is in port on the eastern side of northern England is coming out of port and moving 1, 2, 3, 4 into A19. Well, the TBD is coming off escort before that happens. So we have a TBD and a destroyer in the sea zone, and I think that's the only time the submarines can fire is when the ships enter the sea zone. So if he wants to fire, he does get a pretty much exactly even fight. Again, I kind of don't expect it, but that's more dependent on his play style than on just pure logic. So if he does want to come back and take that attack and go for one round and see what happens, we can go ahead and do any of those necessary rolls. It will not change any of... Actually, it might end up changing my non-combats. I might want to go on escort with some other ships, find some other ships to go on escort with, if something gets sunk. We'll deal with it if we have to. I don't expect to have to. Okay. So a destroyer came in from northern England, and he's gonna stay in the sea zone and go on escort. And the TB destroyer is going to leave into A28 and go on escort there. And I think, actually, that's got to be a non-combat movement because I'm moving away from the subs, so that movement into A28 shouldn't have happened yet. Oh well. Yeah, okay. Okay. More combat moves up here involving the German submarine. I'm moving units past this coastal sub in A4. Before I do that, I'm pulling ships out of port just to make sure that if he does want to get froggy with it, he's got to deal with a decent amount of firing back. So in A4, he's got a chance to fire at a heavy cruiser, a light cruiser, a battle cruiser, a coastal defense ship, and a transport for one round. That would be really whack if he did that. So again, I'm just going to assume he's not going to do that. The most reasonable attacks for him to decide to take part in are definitely the one in the mid-Atlantic with the subs, because that's close to an even fight. Arguably, I have an advantage just from pip distribution. I have one better unit than he does, but his His are all spread out, so he loses more if he gets a hit. But it's only one round anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And the Italians, if he's planning on declaring war, it makes some sense to make an attack there. But again, that's not going to change anything else. So, okay. Let's just keep going. The transport that came from the western side of northern England is just going in port in A4 with the ships that came out of port just now in A4. So the short end of it is that just a transport moves from northern England to Scotland in port. The heavy cruiser continues through to A6, and it's going to go in port in the eastern side of northern England. Alright, more naval movements. I am going to take... That's a non-combat. We'll do that later. Okay, so let's do the last combat we have to do. Yeah. So that's just going to be a seaplane attacking with a destroyer paired against a submarine. For one round. So we've got a seaplane, a destroyer, and a submarine. Seaplanes do attack at 3. Yeah. Okay. So do round 1. Miss for him. Misses for me. So his submarine is going to submerge. Alright. And now I can do the rest of my non-combats, so I'm actually doing things in the right order. Alright. The plane that attacked the submarine in A51 is going to go off-map into Ascension, or Ascension, however you pronounce it, I don't know. 1, 2. So it does have the map range to do that. Likewise, the fighter in A54 is going to come off map onto the light carrier. So it's still on map, just in a different C zone now. And it happens in the non-combat phase. Okay, okay. So one more non-combat naval move up north. The TBD that was in port west on the west side of northern England is coming out and going one C zone over into A20. And that completely means all of the British battle group that was there is just gone now in that I put in port in northern England. Okay. Land movements in the United Kingdom. 2 infantry are railing from Scotland to southern England. Two militia are walking. No, one militia is going to walk from northern England to southern England. The fighter in northern England is going to fly to southern England, and likewise the transport plane in northern England is going to fly to southern England as well, and it's going to carry the airborne infantry with it when it does that. Not really different from it walking, but still more comfortable for them, I guess. Okay. You know, I think maybe I don't need this extra militia here either. If I can defend with scrambling, that militia is going to join in southern England as well. That's the more vulnerable location, actually. Okay, I'll do a unit rundown of where everything is at the end of my turn. Make sure everything is very clear. Okay, more non-combat movements for British Commonwealth, more for GB. The Dutch Coastal Defense Ship and TBD in whatever sea zone this is, A23, is going to just sail up one sea zone into A6. As far as I'm aware, there's no restriction against them doing that, even if they're not British just yet. Okay, and lastly, in Poland, the fighter from Warsaw is going to fly 1, 2, 3, 4, and just going to land in A6. And that is going to be where I'm building the light carrier, so that should be allowed. There is a seaplane on maritime air patrol that it's passing. As far as I can tell from my reading of the rules and from discussions with my teammate Tactical, it appears I can kind of just fly right past him unless he's a fighter, and then I would have to screen to get past him. I do also have a potential interpretation of the rules where the seaplane is allowed to engage any unit that enters the sea zone, A12, which would include the fighter. And even though the seaplane itself can't actually hit the fighter, maybe just starting an engagement allows the rest of the Navy sitting here to join in which case it'd be a very bad idea to sail directly into that gauntlet just to try to get past. But as far as I'm aware, I don't think those restrictions with the seaplane apply to other aircraft. They would only apply to units that they could hit, which would be submarines and transports exclusively. So I do think I am able to just skirt past them and land in A6. Further in Poland, the infantry in East Poland is going to walk into Warsaw. Okay. That's all of GB. Let's move on to FEC. Oh, look, we're done there too. Anzac. Okay, let's do the Dutch first. The submarine is gonna skirt through P60. 1, 2, 3, and it's gonna end in P44. Alright, and in Australia, the fleet from South Australia is all coming out. Oh, I should have deleted that, I'm gonna need it. the transport is going to stop in P72 for a moment and pick up a militia, which is going to disembark in the North Island. The remaining fleet elements of my version of the Australian fleet is also going to be joining the transport in port in the North Island. And lastly, a militia from the South Island is going to use the narrow crossing and cross over to the North Island to protect the fleet. Alright, that should be all of my movement. Let's get straight into placements then. One unit goes to each of the 3 factions. The militia for Anzac is going to go into New Guinea. I think I'd like to force him to use more than just those Marines. The colonial infantry is going to be placed in Benares. And one, I want to add to the non-combat movement. 2 infantry from Delhi are going to march over to Benares as well. Hold on. No, they're just going to stay. I won't do anything with that. So the only change is going to be 1 new FEC colonial in Benares. Yeah, okay. And then the light carrier is, of course, being placed in A6, so the fighter can land on it. I don't know that I like this arrangement. It feels a little light. I have harder hitters than he does. It'll be alright. A lot of 6s. If you include the coastal defense ships. Yeah, okay, it'll be alright. Alright, for the Lend-Leases, the infantry from the factory in northern England is going to be sent straight through to Cameroon. The only potential interdictor is the submarine in A51, which is submerged. So there should be a Free French infantry. And there will also be KMT infantry. No, KMT militia that I'm sending. Yeah. Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. The militia is going to, of course, be sent to Nanking. There's not another port available. Also, just a little side note, I don't know if it was ever announced in any of the videos. I did select Cameroon as the new capital for the Free French, in case that wasn't abundantly obvious here. Okay, now let's collect income. I have 31 for GB, 28 plus 3 for owning Suez. FEC should go to 16. I don't expect them to keep any of it. ANZAC goes to 9, which brings them to 10 after the saved one. Not bad, not bad. Alright, let's move on to the French then. Okay, so for the buys, there's absolutely nothing, no bank to work with. For combat moves, there's only one. French destroyer that was on escort duty in M4 is coming off and moving 1, 2, 3, 4 into A27 and going on escort there. And that's a combat move because the Italians can declare war when I slide past him, and he will absolutely annihilate the destroyer if he chooses to do so. If Italy wanted to declare war, it makes more sense to me to do it in the east against the British, so I don't think we have to worry about that either. More moves. The French destroyer that was in A20 coming off escort and moving into port in southern England. There we go. Okay. Oh, I did. I forgot to move the other TBD during the actual non-combat move because I deleted the line during the combat move phase. Okay. That's all that the French have to do other than collect, which is just going to be 8. At this point, the board should be ready to pass off to Davik for his Italian turn. So the Americans rearm only starting July of 39, which we are in. So he shouldn't have started rearmament until just now. So I will comment on there's a discrepancy between the board state passed on 5 stars video and on this one. This one appears to be correct. The American income before the Japanese declaration of war was 12, not 22. So the U.S. income right now, currently, should be 34, not 44, which is where he said it was on his video. I did forget to mention that earlier. But he definitely had to be at. He couldn't have been at 22. The only trigger was a German declaration of war, which is only 5. They should have been at 11, actually. I'm not sure where the extra 1 came from. We'll have to look into that in discussions in the chat. Just thinking it through, I'm not sure that I'm correct. Anyway, the board should be ready to pass off. Oh no, I did forget 2 things. There should be a recruit roll for both the Netherlands and Iran, both of which should only hit on a 1. Yeah. Okay, so I'll do Iran. Oh boy, that's a miss. Oh well. Iran's feeling mighty weak against the Soviets then. Oh well. Okay, the Netherlands also hits on a 1. Also teasing me. Cool. Okay, now the board should be completely ready to pass off to Davik. Before we end the video, though, I am going to do a rundown of the British Commonwealth and Free French units. So let's get straight into it. For the Commonwealth, we'll start in the Far East, in Anzac territory. South Island is empty now. North Island has 3 militia. In port in North Island is 1 FEC transport, 2 FEC destroyers, 1 Anzac destroyer, 1 Anzac light cruiser. In Sydney is 3 militia, 1 infantry. In New South Wales is 3 militia. In Queensland is 1 militia. And in New Guinea is 1 militia. And there's no other Commonwealth units that need to be accounted for in the Australia area. By Palau, in P-44, there's a Dutch submarine hanging out. In Hong Kong, there's 1 FEC militia. Oh, of course, I don't want to. I want to non-combat move my coastal sub away from the carriers. Not that they're really much safer anywhere else. It'll move into P-51. It'll move into P-51. Yeah, from P-50. So in P-51, there's an FEC coastal sub, which was in P-50. Moving down, Sarawak still only has 1 militia. Malaya has 2 militia. Ceylon has 1 militia. Calcutta has 2 militia. Bengal has 1. Southern India has 1. And Maharashtra has 1. In Delhi, we have 2 GB infantry, 1 Anzac infantry, 6 FEC infantry, and 1 GB seaplane. In Benares, we have 1 FEC colonial, 2 FEC infantry, and 2 Gurkhas. Alright, in the Middle East, we have 1 GB militia in Aden, and 1 GB militia in Transjordan. Nothing changed in southern Iran. It's still just 1 militia, 2 infantry, neutral. British Somaliland is now empty. It's moving south through Africa. Tanganyika has 1 GB militia. Belgian Congo has 1 GB militia. South Africa has 1 GB infantry, 1 GB colonial infantry, 1 Anzac motor infantry, and 1 Anzac artillery. Also in port in South Africa are an FEC transport, an FEC heavy cruiser, and an Anzac transport. That's all of the southern part of Africa. In A-53, there's an FEC fighter and light carrier, and a GB destroyer. The fighter is on maritime air patrol, while the other 2 units are on escort duty. In A-51, there's just a destroyer. In Ascension, there's a seaplane. Alright, that should cover everything in the southern part of the map. Moving north, on the eastern coast of Africa again, in Nubia is one militia. In Lower Egypt, there are 5 infantry, 1 colonial infantry, and 1 militia. In the Mediterranean, there is 1 GB submarine and M9. In Gibraltar, there are 4 infantry, 1 mountain infantry, 1 militia, 1 medium bomber, and 2 heavy cruisers in port. In A44, there's a heavy cruiser on escort, 2 GB battleships, 1 FEC battleship, and then the rest of the units are GB. There's a light cruiser, a naval transport, a submarine, a light carrier, a tactical bomber, and 2 destroyers. Alright, moving up to the North Atlantic. In A28, there's a TBD on escort. In A19 and an A18, there's a destroyer on escort. And in A20, it's another TBD. In London, there is 1 infantry and 1 militia, and I did not repair the factory damage. Not that I had the money to, anyway. In southern England, there should be 5 militia, 1 airborne, 2 infantry, 1 fighter, 1 transport plane. In northern England, there's going to be 1 infantry, and then to the east in port is going to be a heavy cruiser. In Scotland, we have 1 militia on the ground, and then in port to the north is 1 light cruiser, 1 battle cruiser, 1 coastal defense ship, and 1 transport. Out of port in A6 is a light carrier and a fighter. I also have in Poland, in East Poland, 1 militia, Lubelski, 2 militia, Warsaw, 2 militia, 3 infantry. That should be all Commonwealth units across the board. Moving on to Free French, comparatively quite little. In Africa, we have an infantry in Cameroon. We have a destroyer on escort in A27. We have a destroyer in port in southern England into A21, the southwestern shipyard. And also in A21 is a medium bomber on maritime air patrol. That should be all of it. I should be just ready to stop recording and pass the board off to Davik. Best of luck on your Italian turn.